something that we don't always do well, and I think needs to be part of whatever plan is put together, is either when you're defending, but especially when you're promoting, try to understand what is kind of the strategic direction of the school, in which direction they are going, and see how you find something in common. Not to approach it tactically, just dumping there. Okay, we are fencing, we're really cool, but really to understand what are our demographics, what is the value that we bring, etc., and then trying to align that to their goals. For example, tell you, my school, we just finished the transition from Division 2 to Division 1. Okay, that makes it. Yeah, thank you.
Congratulations.
Literally a few weeks ago. That is a very long process. It took like 4 or 5 years from the referendum to really manage everything, and actually most of the true Division 1 sports are not going to be able to qualify for championships for another 3 years. Okay, it's a very long transition, and it's a big investment. It is really the school strategically decided we are excellent academically, we need to couple it with an excellent athletic experience so that we can really inspire and do both things at the same time. And it is possible. And there are great examples like the schools you come from that actually do that. So that's who our school wants to be. So they have no interest whatsoever in cutting any sport. They just moved from Division 2 to Division 1. They have never put on the table cutting us, okay? But it's clear, and they also, related to COVID, we are in the situation where they don't have big dollars to defend from basketball or football. We don't have football, and basketball is still not a revenue generating engine for us until it will take maybe many years. So we are not defending anything. We are growing. So for me, that's fantastic for us. But they just joined a conference called the Big West, where every single school there is in California, except one that is in Hawaii. So we get our doses of exotic travel to Hawaii, and then the other 9 schools are all in California. They are UCs or Cal State. I'm the only fencing program there.
Congratulations on winning the conference, then.
Yeah, no, there's no, we are not. So my management starts to wonder, they see this. Of course, they need to question. It's like strategically, we don't really have a reasons. We're really happy with what you're doing, the progress that we're making, but we see a trend to regionalize things a bit more because of cost reasons too. And you're alone in California. So if one day they have any pressure point, they should cut my program. So the only thing that I can do is figure out a way why fencing would be extremely interesting for the other schools in that conference. And if I have a plan and it's backed up by USFA Fencing, Coaches Association, everything, like a big initiative, and we show them how we add value to their strategic vision about developing athletics in the UC system or the Cal State system, then I have a good reason. And then my athletic director will be my biggest advocate. Because he will say, yeah, we have it. We can show you how to do it. Let's do it together instead of being challenged. And that's kind of the way we need to start thinking. How do we add value? And there are plenty of ways, but you do need to understand on the other side, the school you are talking to, what are their goals? What are their pain points? How can you help them to solve something?
So, So which of those, so it sounds like one of the first kind of action items would be to identify schools that have, schools that are looking to kind of expand their athletic programs, schools that have fencing clubs, and try to see where those two things overlap, and really start putting the pressure on to try to turn those club teams into varsity teams, and basically expand the conferences that we have so that there's kind of active competition for the existing programs. Is that kind of what you're getting at there?
Yes, that's if you want it, that's a bit of one of the ways of operationalizing it, right? We just look at kind of where you can hook something to start the conversation. You already have a fencing club, okay? You are close to an amazing fencing community that is very active, where you're going to be able to find coaches. That's one of the other problems, to find a coach that will be able to run the program most likely on a part-time basis at the beginning. And that's a lot of work, and the pay is not huge. So there are many things that are, if you want, that make the implementation easier. But you still need to figure out about, okay, what are the gaps that the athletic department has, and how can you, by adding fencing, help? Do they have limited participation? They need more. Maybe we need to start with a women only one. Or our demographic profile that we can bring, that is the average on a college program in fencing, fits what they are missing. Okay, so that's one of the angles we can take, certainly in California. Okay, and that could be very powerful, that we can really show. So you need to investigate. You need to understand what are all the good elements we have, but then be selective with which argument you are actually leading by having that conversation. And it's a very long process. It takes years. But I also believe, and you look at the experience of other schools, I'm looking at the progression of new programs of, for example, lacrosse. Lacrosse added last year 14 programs. And in the last, what did we look at it before? Was, I think, 8 to 10 years, they added more than 100 programs. Lacrosse women. I know because I've been told that actually lacrosse USA has people that have been proactively, like a pest, going into every single conference meeting, promoting the sport, talking to athletic directors, boom,
That's
boom,
great.
boom, knocking on the door consistently for years. I know they've been knocking on my school too. Okay, so all the time. That is work. Is work, and then figuring out how this could actually make a difference. Another in a much smaller scale. Sorry, go ahead.
How can the USFA help with any of the things that you're saying? Is there anything that
I think USFA, yeah. I'm a strong believer that USA fencing has done an amazing job on the national level, right? And the Olympic teams in the last 2 Olympic cycles. I do think that if they put their act together and lead, not to do everything themselves, but to kind of, build like a coalition that will really lead. And they have the name and the recognition to say, yeah, this is actually one of our top 2 priorities. Of course, Olympic fencing and the national team needs to remain there, but this should be kind of the other one, okay? And really makes that clear statement, formulate the vision, and put together the team. I told them recently that they shouldn't call it a committee because committees, in my understanding, they end up being, a bunch of nice people just talking, but not doing. So I think they need to turn it into a task force, okay? Something that they put together.
has the feeling of action.
Yeah, it has the feeling of action. But also, who knows? I mean, Peter is coming as a new president. Whenever there is a change, there is an opportunity. I mean, both candidates mentioned collegiate fencing in their campaign. You interviewed them, Andrew. I'm pretty sure Peter is gonna, that would be one of his opportunities to try to make a difference. So I'm hopeful. I think in the coming months we should see movement, and I'm actually convinced we're gonna win this battle. It couldn't go any other way. With the success we've had on general fencing, that needs to translate back into collegiate. Otherwise, we have a problem.
Yeah, I was actually looking up the rules for transitioning a club to a sport on the Div 1 level before the, and it's not really that complicated. There's pretty much 2 main qualifications. One is that when the club transitions to a sport, it needs to still respect the Title IX, which is that there's approximately equal opportunities for men and women in the college, in your college sport. And the other one is that the club must have sufficient money when they transition to a team to sustain the team at the level of other teams without taking any funding away from them. And that includes salaries for the coaches, scholarship, travel, that sort of thing. So it pretty much just comes down to money and equality. And there's not a lot of other things besides that. So
equality is pretty easy if you just pull a men and a women's team together at the same time.
Yeah,
exactly.
But if they have a problem where they don't have enough women in sports, you do it. I mean, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, UC Davis kind of publicly declared we need an additional women's sport. And they actually said, I think they were looking at rugby, lacrosse, and fencing. Okay. We didn't get a chance because we were not structured to be able to address that opportunity. Lacrosse and rugby, they are. And actually, if you look at the statistics, they are the ones growing because they have a concerted effort to open new programs.
Yeah.
Okay. We need to do it. Actually, there is like an amazing, in Davis, in California, there's an amazing modern pentathlon type of facility that is being built next to the university. So that would be even fantastic logistically, because they're going to have kind of a little fencing section. So we just need to put the story together in that case and, connect the dots and do it. But when we just hope that things will happen and we are not structured and organized to do it, they don't happen.
Right.
Okay.
Of course.
So, but that's the easy part to fix. I hope.
Veronica, anything else you have to say?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just don't want to interrupt anyone because Zoom is, difficult. One thing I wanted to bring up, in all of this is, yes, structure and the financing and the equality part is, are very much the foundational foundational parts of it, solid team. But I also say, just from my experience on a pretty strong team, is the approach that the student athletes have in making change and in empowering their program and other programs. And I could say just from the transition even from Peter to Daria, how much the program has changed in a positive light, where my voice is as maybe valued, maybe not to that extent, but I can very comfortably go to the board of Harvard Athletics and speak freely about my experience on the team, that we need more funding, that look at the prestigious athletes we have and like the results that we are able to have and what we've done in the sport. And that's coming from the culture on the team, right? Because if you go into a program where the point of it was to get into college, as some fencers, again, we were talking about what's the motivation sometimes for parents to sign up their kids. It's like, oh, it's a side door to get into college or get into a really amazing school. And sure, that is, a lot of people do that. And it's definitely a motivator for athletes in high school to, go to a good school and be an athlete. But then it's that culture that comes from day one of being on the team, and not only living up to that culture, but bringing it down to the younger generations.
I think that's really important. I agree.
Yeah, that actually makes me wonder, another action point is honestly not just, right, you don't need just the, the other place to get buy-in depending on what the situation is. As Juan was saying, it's like all going to be very situational, but is the actual athletes at the club and who, on the club team and how active that club team is. Because there are certainly club teams that are more active than others. And there are some clubs that exist, but just would not be transferable to a varsity team, no matter who wanted it to happen. Whereas there are some that are basically almost act like varsity teams anyway, and could basically just make the switch officially if they had a little bit more money and a little bit of motivation from the higher ups to do it. So that's also really important to try to build that culture in clubs, in fencing, like collegiate fencing clubs, to try to set ourselves up to win that transition to when schools are looking to expand their athletic programs.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if the USFA had some sort of like transition task force to help the clubs that are in a position to become teams turn into teams and transition smoothly. So
yeah,
I don't know who those are. Maybe we should have found somebody who's part of a
club. Yeah, I think so too.
to join this discussion.
Next time I will.
Fair point, Andrew. That's on you. but it is true. I think that's a total miss. I think that's an extremely relevant point. And I agree with you, Jeff. There are clubs that is very recreational and so forth, but it's actually quite a bit of an active, multiple leagues of competitions between kind of a slightly more sophisticated clubs that are very self-managed, and they are quite actually impressive. So I know of many of them. So, and that certainly is a very important ground. And so that's actually Denison. I spoke about Denison before. They were a club. That's how Peter Gamboa's, the head coach, started. They really work on the club level, made it very successful. Went to some of these hybrid competitions where clubs fence varsity teams, and I started to do some good job. Also, he did a very good job in communication, sort of really sharing a lot what was happening, because you don't only need to do things, people need to know about it. And then he managed to make the women now varsity, and I'm pretty sure he will convince the school to do the men too. So I think that's, sometimes we go back to people with a lot of experience in collegiate athletics, or sometimes somebody like Peter, for example, that just arrived, a long fencing history, but arrived late into the process, and he was a school teacher, a school professor in his university, and he managed to do this. That's tremendous knowledge as well.
Yeah. Is there anything else any of you guys want to say before we part ways?
The future is bright.
Yes. I hope so. One of the nice things about the virus is that it kind of gives you a lot of time to get things done. So the USFA and the college and the NCAA and like the other college conferences don't have the competitions that they have to worry about. So this is a time when they could really make a push and try to get more teams going in college. So
yeah, I think that's true. And I think to me, what's really come out of this conversation is a whole kind of series of potential action points that we can do fairly quickly. It's because obviously boosting NCAA fencing participation is something that I think people talk about a lot. Everybody in fencing knows to some extent like how important NCAA is to our sport in this country. But what I'm taking away from this is that you need to kind of identify. We need to identify. Sorry. Really make it a priority. Start identifying specific schools that are expanding, specific schools that have strong clubs that could potentially be transitioned. Really, and then kind of making sure that there's really strong communication in terms of what these clubs and what these clubs are doing, and then also about our sport to the universities that want to expand, and kind of just trying to remove as many barriers as possible to that expansion. Does that kind of summarize what we've been talking about here? I feel like it'd probably be good to just kind of finish it on a
it's sometimes when you take a nebulous topic like get more fencing in college and you break it down into steps of how that happens, it seems a lot more doable, and it gives you a place to start. So
definitely.
Very good. I agree. You want me to say my cow quote, just to summarize it?
Go ahead.
For me, collegiate fencing is a cow that we've been milking, and we need to start feeding back the cow because it's kind of a bit skinny. Okay, and that's I know it's maybe too much of an image to remember, but it summarizes. At the end of the day, it's something we need to bring back into health and then be able to keep the good progression that we have in the sport overall.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
Guys, thank you so much for having this discussion.
Thank you, everyone.
Conversation.
Wait, 1 sec. Before you guys go, I just wanted to say two things quickly. The first is that at the timing of the filming of this video, the Brown and Stanford safe fencing petitions are still going, so I'll include links in the description if you want to help save those programs and help college fencing in general. It only takes 2 seconds. Just click on the link and add your name to the petition. Also, this conversation was getting a little long, so we split it into 2 parts, and you can find the link to the other part in the video description as well. Thanks, guys.